Some great work created by you guys so far. Well done. And we've got some really good color schemes going on. We've got some really good fonts, and I've seen some great images you guys have used. Some of you guys have used more than one image. I'll try to keep my images minimal because we do not want too much information on our pages. I'd usually say to use a maximum of 2 images. Even if you can just reduce it to 1, that would be even better. Okay. The last thing we want is an image showing maybe the ocean and then another image showing the same ocean again. We do not need too many images. 1 image is always enough. Okay. Unless we're trying to use an image to show 2 different things, that's fairly understandable, but we still do not want to overload our audience with too much information. What do I mean by audience? Audience refers to the people who will be viewing or watching our presentation. Imagine if I have an advert and I want to sell you a toy for your age. Am I going to use language which will be more suitable for adults or suitable for babies? I need to try and get the language suitable for your age. So that's why we always need to think about our audience. So I've got this wonderful presentation here. I've got my information. One thing we need to bear in mind is the amount of information I'm putting on as well. Now this, what I've got so far, is a huge piece of text. Looking at it, a lot of people would look at it and think it's too much information. I do not want to read it. So there's a few ways we can work around this. One way what we can do is we can reduce the amount of information we have. Usually presentations are something we may usually just have a line and someone would explain exactly what they want to say. But in this case, we're having all of the information on the presentation. So one thing we can do is we can reduce the amount of information we put on the slide. The second thing is we can make it seem as if it's less information. A huge block of text like that looks like a lot of information. What we can do is we can break it down into bullet points. So the text box I have already contains a bullet point. If I wanted to get rid of the bullet point, or if I didn't have a bullet point and I wanted to add one, if you can see on my ribbon towards the top of the page, I have the option for a numbered list, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or I have bulleted lists. So these are bullet points for each point. And as you can see, I have different types of bullet points I may want to use. So you may want to change your type of bullet point. I have this round bullet points. I've got this diamond style bullet point. I've got a shadowed box bullet point. I've got arrows, stars, and a sort of pointed arrow bullet point as well. So I'm actually going to go on to the shadowed box. Now, what I would like to do is I'd like to break this down into smaller points. So I have the Pacific Ocean is the largest and deepest of the world ocean basins. Now, that's the end of the sentence. So I'm going to head over to the next sentence and I'm going to create a new bullet point. All I need to click on is the Enter key, and that will push that onto a second bullet point. Covering approximately 63 million square miles and containing more than half of the free water on Earth, the Pacific is by far the largest of the world's ocean basins. That's another sentence. And the next sentence I will put onto a third bullet point. All of the world's continents could fit into the Pacific basin. Okay, so now that, even though it's the same amount of information, we've broken it down into 3 bullet points and it looks a little bit nicer. That middle bullet point is still quite big, so we can think about a way we can break that down further. But what we will be doing is next week, I will show you guys exactly how we can make it seem as if it's even less information with the use of animations. But like I said, we're going to come back to that next week. So if you guys want to head over and you can start breaking your information down, remember you can either remove information so that there's less information, or we can break it down into bullet points. Ideally, if we break it down to bullet points, we have the same amount of information on there. If you guys can go ahead and do that and come back, and we'll move on to another task. Now, I've got this amazing image which I like. And what I'm going to do is if I just remove that, as we can see, this red line pops up. Now, that red line indicates a guide for me. So if I move that there, now that is perfectly in line. The center of that image is at the center or meets the center of that text box. So that is adjusted well, aligned well in that sense. Now, two things I'm going to do with this image. Firstly, I'm going to change the shape of this image so that it is no longer a box or a rectangle. I'm going to change it to a slightly different shape. If I click on the image, now I've got this button here which says crop image. Now, if I click on that, what that does is that allows me, as we can see, to chop off part of the image that I do not want. So there could be a lot of stuff going on in that image, and I don't really want all of it there. So I can chop off the bits that I don't want. I may do that to get a different size. Maybe the image itself is too wide, so I may want to chop off a bits of the side to get part of the image that I want. Or there may be other stuff going on that image, so I want to just get rid of some of the bits and just focus on one part of it. So that's how I can crop the image down. If there's any images that you feel you need to crop down, you're more than welcome to crop them down. However, next to this crop button, I actually have a little arrow. And when I hover over that arrow, it says mask image. If I click on that, it gives me various shapes I can use. Now, there may be a shape that I like, which I want to use, and I want to actually incorporate that shape into the image. So if I use this cloud image, for example, what that will do is that will turn my image into the shape of a cloud. Okay. Now, bearing in mind, we need to think about exactly what image, what our presentation is trying to show. We're giving off information, so the shapes we would need to use should be appropriate. Okay. So what do I mean by appropriate? Appropriate means that it should be in line with what we have or what we're trying to present. We're showing information. This is a formal presentation, so we want to use a formal shape. Had it been me trying to advertise a toy to children where I'm trying to be a bit more fun, I may want to use fun images. However, this one, or fun shapes, however, this presentation is a little bit more formal, so we want to use formal shapes. Now, in terms of being formal, there aren't many shapes I can use. Okay, however, if I head up to shapes towards the top, I do have some relevant shapes. So you may find a shape there which you feel is relevant. Which one do you feel is the best one? We've got this rectangle, which we had initially. I've got this rounded rectangle where the corners are rounded. And then I have a few which are the corner is snipped or snipped from two sides. There's all of these shapes I can try out. I think this one is the best one, so I'm going to go ahead with this one. And this little yellow diamond I have on the corner, if I play around with that, I can actually change how deep that curve is on that shape. Okay, so you can always play around with that and get the shape that you want. So if you want to go ahead and any images that you have, if you want to go and edit them, get the shapes that you want so that we can get a better look to our slide. And now the last thing we're going to do is we're going to actually edit that image. We're going to actually add a border around it. Now, usually whenever we have an image or even a text box, one thing we want to use or we can use is the border color. If I click on the text box, we will also have a fill color. So this little paint box actually refers to filling in the color of that shape. We are actually going to edit the border. Okay, so if I edit the border of this text box, as you can see, that's added a small border around it. I may need to resize it as my text is not fitting in perfectly. So I can use that. But more importantly, I'm going to head over to this image and do the same thing. I'm going to add a border. Okay, you might be able to decide which color you feel is the most appropriate and suitable. As you can see, that's added a thin border around that shape. Now the next thing I'm going to do, again, next to that, I have the border weight, so I can change the thickness of that border. Now that 1px refers to pixels, so this is only 1 pixel thick. Pixels are the tiny little dots that make up each image. You have loads of pixels on your screen, you have loads of pixels on your TV, they're all individual colored dots to make up an image. but we're going to talk about pixels when you're older. So if I use something like 4 pixels, that is now the width of 4 pixels, and now we have a thicker border. I can make that thicker if I want. Let's try 12. Okay, much thicker, but that does not look too formal. I can also change the type of border, so I can use a dotted border. I can use lined borders, lines combined with dots as well. However, again, they're not formal enough for this type of presentation, so we are going to keep our normal border. So go ahead and change or add and change any borders that you wish to any text boxes and any images. Remember, you've also got your title box as well if you want to change that. Remember to resize anything if you need to in order to keep it looking neat. Make sure you submit your work when you're done, and I will see you guys next week on how we can improve the look on our presentation. But you guys have come a long way since week 1, so well done to you all.